Okay. So it's going to record this now. So do you want to give a prayer?
Sure.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the chance we have to meet together. Grateful for Chantel and her kindness and being able to meet with me and talk about the case. Grateful for BYU Idaho and the chance we have to go to school online. And we're thankful for all that we have. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay. I'm going to jump into just screen sharing to some extent here. Let me go.
Okay.
No, I can't find it on here. There we go.
So when everyone's on here, so we'll all be able to see each other like in 6 or 7 different screens? Is that the kind of the thing?
Yeah. So, yeah, you'd be able to see each other. Like you could click on the screen where the people are at down at the bottom. Like right now, mine just went where it's showing tons of people. Like, or if I click on you, it's going to show you to you. So you can kind of get an idea of who's who, I guess. But then the biggest thing I think is to be able to have an easy discussion and to, to be able to share screens and share ideas easier. So I think that's good. So last night, some of the key points that we talked about with the case, we kind of went over the ideas of the case and the basics of the case. And then the key points of what Mary should have done to start with, and the behavior style that Mary had, that Simon had, and then also that Shelburne had. So we kind of talk about that. What do you think the main issue in the case is?
My initial thought was it was communication.
Yeah.
Like a lack, not necessarily a lack of communication, but effective communication. They, like the initial thing, it just sounds like everyone's annoyed. Like he seems flustered, and then Shelburne seems annoyed that Simon did what he did.
Right.
All kind of like they're annoyed with each other, but not effective communication.
Right. They're not saying on their own, like, hey, this should change or whatever else with it. And I think you're right. I think that's it. Another thing that was brought up was kind of the idea that that maybe what's his name? Simon York kind of has a power trip with being newer to the job.
Right. A total power trip.
Right.
I thought that Shelburne was annoyed at was that Simon was on a power trip and he didn't want Simon to be better than him in some way. I don't know if that came up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Sheldon was annoyed with Simon being pushy, and I think that also that just the expectations that maybe Simon was trying, Simon York was trying really hard to just prove himself because he was new to the position. So one of the things that we talked about last night was, I'm showing here in Doctrine and Covenants 121:39, it kind of talks about this tendency of the natural man. It says, let's see. We have learned by sad experience that it is the nature and disposition of almost all men. As soon as they get a little authority, as they suppose, they will immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion. Hence, many are called, but few are chosen. No power or influence can or ought to be maintained by the virtue of the priesthood, only by persuasion, long-suffering, gentleness, and meekness, by love unfeigned. And then it goes on with a few more. It says, kindness, pure knowledge, which shall enlarge thyself without hypocrisy and without guile. And I think that, like, if you kind of replace in there, like, can't be maintained by the virtue of the priesthood, you could also say that power can't be maintained by the virtue of just your title,
Right.
In your job. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It mainly just revolved around the communication and the fact that when he got a title, he went like you said, just on a power trip. Basically what I thought are the same thoughts that you guys had. And I really like that scripture that points out that it happens everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I also kind of liked one thing we didn't talk about last night, but I like that it actually talks about what to do to fix it as well. It says, reproving betimes with sharpness when moved upon by the Holy Ghost. So like for Mary's example, you know, she's at a point where she has to do something about the situation. But then it says, showing forth afterwards an increase of love toward him whom thou hast reproved, lest he esteem thee to be his enemy. You know, that kind of goes along with, you know, making sure that when you give feedback that it's positive and that people, or at least that it ends on a positive note, and that they're not thinking that you don't like them, but you're just trying to correct the behavior.
Yeah. That's then my case study write-up that I did, I said that there needs to be like I said policy, but I don't know if that's the right word, but like a kind of like a chain of command on like what to do in these situations. Like everyone needs to be calm, cool, collected, and have a chain of command to know that how to solve the problem.
I agree.
Freak out.
Right. Because if somebody comes into your office, I mean, if I was Mary and somebody came storming into my office, like I have to talk to you and then just keeps carrying on about the problem, like I would like start to think that they were part of the problem, you know? Because at that point, you know, at the beginning, Shelburne wasn't being part of the solution. He was just, you know, making the problem bigger and spreading it like, hey, this guy was angry with me. Now I'm coming up and I'm angry with you. And I think that just kind of spreads the challenges. So I wouldn't like that very much. So some of the questions that we're supposed to talk about as well is the specific behaviors that raise the concern in there. So not just like generalizations, but what are some of the specific behaviors that were the concerns?
When he yelled, when he went down and yelled at everyone for the brand, what was it? The X Games thing?
Yeah, the winter 10 games or winter X Games, which I don't know what they're going to call it, but winter X Games.
And the time where he was talking about in the meeting where he kind of like was pretty condescending about how it shouldn't have ever happened in a meeting, or good thing it was an internal meeting. That can be like super condescending.
Yeah, well, like, and he said in there, let me find where it says it. He said something about it being career limiting to that. Turn my page over here. So yeah, there's no excuse for that. It shouldn't have happened. And then he says, good thing this is just an internal meeting. My team dropped the ball and forgot the details on this matter. Then he looked at Durham and continued, if the representatives from the X Games were here, this would definitely be a career limiting move. And I just think like that's like really threatening people and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not good.
I mean, what would you do if you were in a meeting like that? Like if that was you getting attacked?
Right. I was thinking, was Mary there when he said that?
She was.
Was she?
She was, yeah, because it said here that she'd noticed it previously in the meeting last month that she'd hoped that it had just been it says Griffin had been observed at the last brand review meeting. And then she said York was one of 6 brand managers at Derby Foods. Each month, all brand managers presented a review of their respective brands to each other and the full sales team. And it started well with York and his team, and then it went sour. But yeah, she was there and part of that meeting. So
that would be a big. It makes it so no one wants to work for you.
Right.
And you won't be their motivator. So like in that situation, he's telling them that it would be a career limiting move, but that makes everyone scared to make any mistakes, and that makes everyone scared to like push themselves or be creative if they're just going to get beat down like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that when people are scared to make mistakes, they're scared to produce at all because they don't want to like move in the wrong direction. So it's easier to just not move at all,
right?
As opposed to move in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. So what were the what do you think the culture like of Derby Foods is? What do you think that they're trying to have their culture of their company be, or their guiding principles?
Well, my initial thought was, I think I mentioned a little bit before, that I think it states a lot in that first paragraph. It says, "Hey, Mary, do you have a minute?" And not waiting for Griffin's response, Shelburne continued, "I need to touch base with you about Simon. I know that he was recently promoted and may not appreciate how things work around here, but you need to set him straight." So in that, I'm thinking right off the bat that maybe she does set people straight when they need it, and that she might be scared of Simon or doesn't know how to approach it. And that makes me think that the culture is a little weak about how they deal with their managers and how they deal with her as vice president. It makes me think it's a little weak.
That's a good thought, because we didn't discuss that last night. I think that's a good point. You know, that they that I would think that they should have had some training, kind of front loaded this stuff a little bit more. And if you have a new manager, you know, give a little bit more training on stuff. And so, yeah, I would think that that's a weakness in their culture. It seems like they want their culture to be like kind of more team driven and like affiliative, kind of where they're working together on things.
Yeah.
As opposed to what they ended up getting, which is definitely not that. So if we looked at the styles, if we were talking about what style the company would want, I would say the authoritative style is a come with me approach. And it's supposed to kind of give people an ability to, you know, mentor other people and come alongside.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would think that's what they're reaching for, and maybe that's why Sheldon said, you know, how things work around here. But they're not getting it.
Yeah. Part of the thing I thought of is that I don't know which style that is exactly because I haven't read through that perfectly, but it said that, well, and just like from a vice president standpoint, like there's no reason they can't be like good coworkers and work together, but also have like a I'm above you in some way, and not in like a bad way, but like I have more experience, or I've been here longer. I know how things work around here. And it makes it sound like that's a little bit what they're trying to do with him saying, with Shelburne saying, "Mary, he doesn't know how things work around here."
Right. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that that's kind of the maybe the coaching and affiliative style is as well. That you know, it focuses on personal development, and it says it works well with people who are already aware of their weaknesses. But yeah, people have to kind of be aware that there still has to be somebody in charge. You know, you can't have an organization where there's not one person that says, okay, you know, I'm in charge. Yeah. I mean, I guess that when the first presidency talk and when the Quorum of the 12 Apostles talk, like they've made it clear that if not everybody is on the same page, they don't move forward with an action or decision, which I think is good. But I also think that, you know, in the real world, that's not very practical because most people aren't going to be in tune with the spirit. So in the real world, you have to have somebody who's going to say, okay, thanks for the input. We're going to move forward. So
I don't know if that standard is set at Derby Foods because of the way that they talk to each other.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest points with the overall communication is that, yeah, that I don't know if that's standard is set.
Yeah, I would agree with that they aren't talking like respectfully, and being considerate of that. So I guess it said like what would you recommend to maintain, like change the culture or build on the existing culture? What do you think they should do differently then?
I said in my study write-up that they need to have like a company policy / I don't think it's bad to have like a culture write-up. Like this is what we do and this is what we don't do. We don't yell at people. We don't go tattletale. And it feels like in both instances that actually happened. It sounded like Shelburne was tattling, and not that his tattle was wrong. I mean, he
Right.
was about someone yelling.
Right.
But one of the things I thought about is that how nice is it when, like, say there's the workers, the managers, and then the vice president. If there's a problem amongst the workers, how about you get with another worker and say, hey, what should I do, before you go to the manager?
Right.
And then if there's a problem with the managers, why don't you go to another manager to see if you can work it out before you go to the vice president?
Right. Well, and
So
I think that if they go to other workers, though, it could cause more problems potentially, depending on
right,
what
not
is
everything's
happening.
perfect, but just like some sort of structure that
Like
is
maybe a
problem.
conflict resolution, conflict prevention and resolution initiative, maybe.
Right, exactly. Something that just more problem solving, conflict resolution, just, and I agree with you that there's probably something that maybe workers shouldn't work out, that someone else needs to intervene for sure. But just something that's just a little bit more
Concrete.
concrete. Exactly.
Yeah,
And
because go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you.
So I work with family, and so it's really hard to deal with things like this. Like, if there is no such thing as conflict resolution, because I work for my dad. I mean, there
Yeah.
is, but I work for my dad. And so if there's a problem, a lot of my brothers just go to my dad instead of the manager. And the manager feels like it's going behind his back, just going straight to our dad,
Right. Right.
which is exactly what it is. And sometimes we don't even do it intentionally. There's
Right. Well, I
just
think
things that get out
it's
that
got to be
happen.
hard because it's like there's things that you would normally go to a parent about a work situation with, right? You might normally go to your parent like, hey, I'm having this problem at work. What would you do? But when your parent is the owner of the company, then that makes it that line of advice isn't necessarily there without having it be directly company related,
Yeah.
So
So there's issues like that, and I see that in a company like that, how frustrating it would be to have felt like someone is going behind your back.
yeah.
And maybe this isn't the case exactly, because I don't know Shelburne, I don't know Simon, and their specific relationship, but it kind of does feel like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. What kind of work does your family do?
We run a dairy, a calf ranch, and a farm,
Hmm.
and so I work in the office doing all the fun stuff.
All of the management, right?
Yeah, all the books, all the filing papers, all the inventory counts, all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big endeavor to undertake. So I can see how you would have to have a lot of levels with that, from the people who work directly out in the animals, and then
Right.
the office support, and then whoever's making sure the stuff gets actually sold, because otherwise you have no company.
Yep.
So it sounds like you have a lot of room for challenges within a company that size.
Yeah. There's lots of ego involved and hurt feelings because it's family, and try to stay out of that the best you can. But it happens.
Yeah. That's the hard thing when you work with family. We have our own business. A few years ago, Steve got laid off, and he's also in the class with me. I think I don't know if you gathered that, but we're in the same group here. So anyway, we started doing junk hauling and stuff, and our son goes and works with his son. Our son is 17 now. He just turned 17. But, it's like Steve's had to kind of learn, like, when they're on a job, that if Broughton has an idea, that you kind of have to take that idea and say, okay, is there validity to this? Let's see what we can do to work with it, instead of just saying, hey, you're a kid, be quiet. Not that that's the way that he handled it, but that's a hard thing to learn as a parent, going from this is my kid to this is my coworker.
Exactly.
So
Very, very difficult.
yeah, definitely. So what do you think Mary's role is in the culture? How is she supporting it, and how is she working against it?
I think we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah,
She should just be kind of. I feel like you can be both as a manager. I think you can be letter of the law and spirit of the law. Like I think you can be strict but have a good relationship with people. And I think that that's something that she should really take into consideration, like we said with the culture initiative or the product or the problem solving initiative, whatever wording you said. I thought that was great. But
right.
I think it's possible to be a crazy, strict manager, but also be very fun and motivating. I think it's
Right.
possible.
Yeah, I agree that you can have your guidelines and know this is where the boundaries are, but you can still have the motivation. Um, and I think that when you mentioned like the talking about it ahead of time and talking about the policy and write up, the conflict prevention initiative or whatever. We talked yesterday about kind of front loading a situation. So, like if Brockton is having a hard time with understanding something, because he also has high functioning autism, and so I've learned that I kind of have to just tell him ahead of time, okay, this is what's going to happen. These are my expectations of you. And if I do that and I get a commitment from him, he does much, much better with handling it than if I neglect to do that, you know? And with most people, you don't have to do that with every situation. You know, people start to get it after a time, and he is getting it more now that he's older. But you know, the idea is still there. You have to front load the situation and front load it and say, okay, this is my expectation. So I think that with Simon coming on as a manager, that the expectation should have been set, you know, hey, conflicts are going to happen. You're going to be frustrated about this kind of stuff. Here's what you should do, you
Yeah.
know?
I like the word prevention in that. That should definitely be a thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, you know, I think that as a business owner, as a manager, as a parent, it's your job to anticipate what difficulties are going to come and to be ready for those difficulties. Um, so if you're not, you know, you have to be ready for them. You know, it's just like if you're taking your baby out of the house, you're going to load the diaper bag up, because if you don't, you're going to be sorry, you know. Um, and it's the same idea, just in a different context, that you have to kind of load things the right way and have it ready. And if you talk about the potential challenges first, then you know that's better. I think as humans, we're less likely to want to talk about challenges. You know, if you're going to go on a road trip, you don't necessarily want to talk about, hey, if we get a flat tire, we're going to do this, this, and this, you know, because you feel like you're almost jinxing yourself. Like, well, if we don't talk about the flat tire, it might not happen. But
Right.
in reality, you need to be prepared for your flat tire, because if you're stuck out there without a jack or a spare tire or whatever else, you know, it's a
Yeah,
problem.
that's
So,
true. All sorts of things to be proactive and preventative about as a manager. And I
yeah.
think the parent analogy is perfect.
Yeah, I think it's very effective. I mean, I've been a parent for a while now, since my son is 17. We have a 17-year-old, 15-year-old, and 12-year-old. So, you know, you see after a while kind of the parallels that happen in running a business and parenting and stuff like that. You know, they all overlap.
Yeah.
So I guess the other thing that it talks about here is we talked about what Simon's role is, I guess, a little bit, and how he's working against the culture. One of the things we talked about yesterday is how he's supporting the culture. Like, you know, he really wants the product to be good. Oh, it is here, Steve. I'm sorry. He wants the product to be good, and he wants them to be able to be successful and effective. So I think in that way, he's supporting their company culture.
Right. He's it makes it sound like he's the type of guy that you want on your team,
Yeah.
but needs to be reined in.
Yes, exactly. Well, we were saying that like his styles for leadership were more of like a pace setting style. Like, this is what we have to do. This is our demands.
Yeah.
And kind of a coercive style, like, hey, it has to be done this way. And while those can get the job done, it's not going to lead to very good employee satisfaction, which when you have poor satisfaction, then you're going to have a higher turn rate, which is very expensive.
Totally.
One of the things I talked about in my write-up was just the HR crisis waiting to happen on that, that if it's handled incorrectly, that people go to HR, it's a problem with that. And the cost of hiring a new employee, it's like 215% of their salary till somebody is fully effective in their job, replacing. So if you go from replacing somebody that was effective to getting somebody else that's fully effective, it's like 215% of the salary, which is huge. Yeah. So, it's better to try and adjust things instead of making it go the wrong way. So I think we also talked about kind of the team members' roles in that, like talking with other people and trying to problem solve better. I think that it would have been good if they had an email system where obviously they would have an email system, but instead of going up and talking to somebody about something, try and email about it, because you can actually read through it and listen to what you're saying a little bit more clearly.
Right.
As opposed to
big thing in communication.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm upset about something, it's almost always better for me to stop and write it down instead of trying to talk about it, because I'm going to be rude, and not come across the way that I would want to. So, let's see. So how would you, it asks, how should Mary approach the discussion with that?
I think she should call a meeting with all her managers.
So you would call a meeting of all the managers and talk to everybody collectively?
Well, maybe not right at first, but maybe when that's specifically resolved, and just say, hey guys, this is unacceptable behavior. We need to be able to hold it together. You can't just start blaming people for mistakes that happen every day. There's got to be a positive note in everything you do. And right off the bat, I think she should sit down with just Simon, and like we talked about, like the scripture you brought up, like the record needs to be set straight, but also maybe set the record with everyone else, saying these are my expectations and this is the way I want you to act. And you're a manager, you need to be able to what's the word I'm looking for? You need to act like you're a manager. Like you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And you need to, what's the word I'm looking for? Represent the company well. You need to represent the company.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That you have to try and that she should talk about representing better and doing a better job of that. Let me share my screen again real quick. So in the PowerPoint, it talked about that. This is from earlier this week. It talks about the purposes of feedback and coaching, but it says you want to do the observation, where you pay attention to the behavior, analysis, which is to trace the connection between the behavior and the impact of the behavior. So, talking in the meeting, even, or when she talks with Simon, this is what happened, at the meeting, with the board meeting, you were, embarrassed. He was embarrassed by the flaw in his paperwork, and therefore he transferred that embarrassment to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that caused the other people on his team to draw back and stop working,
Yeah.
And
big thing, big no.
Yeah. Well, I think that, that was the first time that I thought of, and I realized that he was embarrassed and that's why he behaved that way. And I think that, if you can kind of try and help identify the underlying emotion or the underlying cause of the behavior, then you can help people with it. You were embarrassed that happened, but you don't need to be, it's just human error. So, it can be played off a little bit differently than that. There was another one that we talked about. Let me see if I can find the slide on that. Okay, so just the delivering constructive criticism. It talks about, first we're supposed to give positive feedback, like what he's doing well. So she might start with something like, you've had some really great ideas on these projects and such, and that's how you got promoted, and give him some positive feedback. But then I think with the constructive criticism, or what they're trying to rebuild, then you need to be very straightforward and say, you know, this is the challenge, and not beat around the bush on that. Let me see what else we were supposed to talk about in here. I always have like 100 tabs open. Okay. So we talked about like reinforcing the culture. I liked it says, you know, the most effective methods Mary can use to make the discussion productive. We talked about that some. And I also really liked that, you know, talked about after talking with Simon alone, like kind of retraining the managers about company culture and, you know, reiterating, you know, the conflict prevention.
Yeah. Another way to help that spread throughout the whole company is if Mary heads it up and she puts the managers in charge of teaching their workers, like the more you teach, the better you're going to be, and you're more accountable that way. So
yes, yeah. Was it this class we were talking about paradigms in and paradigm shifts?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I can't remember from one class to the other sometimes. So I think that's it. When I was listening to the Stephen R. Covey stuff, and my daughter was hearing it, and she's like, well, that's like when we at our homeschool co-op, you know, the kids learn something and then they teach it to somebody else, and you know, then they get that different perspective of what it is to be the teacher and stuff. And so I think that's exactly it. It kind of changes it gives a paradigm shift and helps them to get it right. So I think that's really good. Trying to see if there's anything else that we talked about yesterday, or do you have any other thoughts on the case, or how would you apply this in your business? What would you do with your company, or like after studying this, is this going to change feedback you give to your dad about your company?
I have a hard time with that because I'm at the bottom of the totem pole.
Oh.
But not in a bad way. I'm the youngest, and I have 3 other brothers that work for my dad and my brother-in-law. And so I think one of the big things is that I have to always make sure that I'm doing my job the best that I can, like I'm not slacking, and so that I can be accountable for what I'm doing, so that I can bring that to the table if I'm ever like questioned, or you know what I mean? Just things like that. And not that I'm in a bad position. I'm everyone's little brother, and so I get to talk about like I'm the youngest and I'm still 15, and so it's things like that that I get worried about. But I've seen a lot of improvement lately in the business where we've decided that communication is actually a good thing, and that we should talk to each other and not just assume that someone's going to do something else. But things have gotten better for sure.
Right. Well, that's good. Do they kind of seem to be like, I guess maybe respectful or receptive to the things that you're learning in your classes for your business degree?
Yes, a lot of what I do hasn't applied much because it's all pretty like business procedure or office procedure type things. Like it's a matter of like just getting it done. And so most of my learning is not even really geared towards my job, which kind of stinks, but some of it is. And they've been received.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes it hard when you're trying to figure out how you can apply it to your own stuff when you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, it's one thing when you're in charge to say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. But it's another thing when you have to take it to everybody else and say, hey, this is it. I think that like possibly like, because I mean, everybody's families have a lot of dynamic challenges and conflicts and stuff. And I found that with my family, like if I kind of say, hey, this is something that I've been learning about, and just throw it out there as, you know, a thought of here's some good information, that they're more receptive to it, you know?
Yeah.
My younger brother has what does he do, Steve? Fire sprinklers. There we go. My younger brother has a fire sprinkler company here in San Diego, and he's worked his way up. Like he started when he was 16 mowing lawns for the guy that owned the company, and he's worked his way up to where he's going to be buying the company soon. And so he puts a lot of emphasis onto that, and like managing the people there and stuff like that, and gives them their best. And then he comes home and like his wife and kids don't get very good stuff. And so I found that with him, it's like pretty effective if I just send him an article like, hey, I thought this was really interesting. Like some of the articles that talk about how to balance your family and business and stuff like that. So it helps him be receptive, I think, a little bit. And we have slight conversations about it, but I understand it's hard. But I think it's helpful for us I think the point of these kinds of things is to think about like how we would apply it. So I think that's a helpful discussion.
For sure.
I think that's it. Oh, the other thing we went over yesterday were the assignments for the weekly, the case study meetings.
Yeah.
So we talked about, I'm going to do next week and Steve's going to do the week after that. And then the following week, I'm not sure if what's the other lady's name? My brain forgot it now. What is her name? Sister Hunt, whatever her name is. Michelle, there you go. I'm not sure if Michelle put you down for the 5th week or the next one after Steve, or if she put, what was that?
I'm lesson 6 and lesson 12.
You're 6 and 12? Okay. All right, so you saw that. So if that doesn't work for you, like if there's something that comes up with your wife and the baby and stuff, let everybody know so we can kind of, work around it. Obviously we want to make sure that you're available there first and foremost. So I think that's about it. I will post the link for this. I'm going to post it to the discussion board so that that's there as well. It didn't look like we had to do anything else or like rating each other for this week. I think that we're supposed to just do that a couple times in the semester. So
okay. And then I'm confused by the discussion board a little bit on that one specifically. I think it says you're not allowed to, you like can't see everyone's post until you post.
Yeah.
But that's for the link, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're just supposed to post the link. So I think that I don't know why they have it set like that on this discussion board.
Okay, I'm just glad I'm not the only one who thinks that.
No, it's kind of a silly setting. So we probably want to, like, at the beginning of the week, just so that you can open up the discussion board, maybe we should just start like a link at the top of the discussion board or something like that. If we open the discussion board and then whoever posted first, if we go back in and we post under that and we subscribe to the thing, then we can at least get notified when there's a new post. That might be helpful, because otherwise there's no notifications at all when there's a new post. You just have to keep checking it. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can develop an idea for that a little bit more, but if we just post to something like, getting into the discussion board, even just say, your name, getting into the discussion board, and then whoever has the first post for the week, hopefully it's the group leader makes the first post, and then everybody can just post everything else underneath that. Like if you have questions or anything like that, then, and subscribe to the thing. So like if I was going to go into this group leader sign up sheet that was posted, looks like I would have to reply to it. So I could say like, thanks for posting, and then click subscribe to the thread. And then you'd see when everybody else posts.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
All right. Well, we can make a little discussion about that more, but I think that's it. I know you have to get back to work. So
thank you. I appreciate all your help.
Oh, no problem. I actually enjoyed the discussion. It gave me new insight. So thank you. All right. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Bye.